You're listening to HECM World Weekly, the nation's only weekly podcast bringing reverse mortgage news to you, the mortgage professional. There are reverse mortgage calculators, but then there are reverse mortgage point-of-sale solutions. Lenderful Solutions helps you get more loans, retain more customers, and even make online applications a reality. To learn more, visit lenderfulsolutions.com.
Hello, and welcome to HECM World Weekly, where we break down the biggest stories shaping the reverse mortgage industry, home equity, and retirement planning. I'm Gabrielle Hayen. This week, we're looking at a major housing bill that briefly looks set to become one of the biggest pieces of housing legislation in years, before a surprise intervention from President Trump put everything on hold. We'll also look at new research showing why many older Americans are finding themselves asset-rich but income-constrained, despite holding record levels of home equity. And finally, we'll explore why communities across America are investing more heavily than ever in helping older adults age in place, and what that means for the future of housing wealth. Let's get started. The biggest story this week came out of Washington. After months of bipartisan negotiations, Congress overwhelmingly passed what's known as the 21st Century Road to Housing Act. Now, if you work in the reverse mortgage industry, you might have seen headlines and wondered whether this included any changes to HECMs. The short answer is no. There are no direct reverse mortgage provisions in the legislation, but don't dismiss it just because of that. In many ways, this could become a really important housing bill for our industry, not because it changes reverse mortgages directly, but because it tackles many of the same challenges that make home equity such an important retirement resource. The legislation contains more than 40 measures aimed at improving housing affordability. It looks at reducing development red tape, encouraging more housing construction, supporting accessory dwelling units, expanding manufactured housing, strengthening housing counseling, and even addressing heirs' property and title issues. In other words, policymakers are acknowledging something we've been talking about for years. America's housing affordability challenges aren't going away anytime soon. More supply is needed, more flexibility is needed, and housing wealth is becoming increasingly important to retirement planning. But then came the twist. Just hours before President Trump was due to sign the legislation into law, he canceled the signing ceremony. He announced that he wanted Congress to first pass the SAVE Act, an election security bill, before he would move forward with the housing package. It surprised lawmakers on both sides of politics because the housing bill had passed by enormous margins. It cleared the House by 358 votes to 32, and the Senate by 85 votes to just 5. So what happens now? There are still several possible outcomes. The president could still sign it. He could allow it to become law without his signature while Congress remains in session, or he could veto it. Although given the overwhelming bipartisan support, Congress may have the numbers to override a veto. Whatever ultimately happens, one thing is clear. Housing affordability has become one of Washington's biggest policy priorities. And that's important for our industry, because while Congress isn't taking specifically about reverse mortgages, it is talking about housing supply, aging populations, housing counseling, multi-generational living, ADUs, and preserving housing wealth. Those are all conversations that naturally intersect with reverse mortgage planning. Now, let's look at home values. New data from Redfin shows home prices continued to rise in May. National prices increased 0.3% during the month and are now up 2.5% over the past year. That marks the strongest annual growth in 6 months. For homeowners, that's obviously good news. More home value generally means more home equity. But economists are also beginning to look much further ahead. The Mortgage Bankers Association says demographic changes may eventually slow housing demand over coming decades as population growth moderates and America continues to age. Now, that's not expected to happen overnight. Housing supply remains extremely constrained today. But it's another reminder that demographics are becoming just as important as interest rates when thinking about the future housing market. For reverse mortgage professionals, today's equity is still the story. Millions of older homeowners have accumulated enormous housing wealth. Helping clients understand how to make the most of that wealth remains one of the industry's biggest opportunities. Speaking of housing wealth, one of the week's most interesting reports came from Harvard's Joint Center for Housing Studies. It highlights what might be one of the biggest contradictions in today's housing market. Older homeowners have never held more equity, yet many are under increasing financial pressure. According to the report, homeowners aged 65 and over now have the highest housing cost burden of any age group. 28% are spending more than 30% of their income on housing and utilities. Think about that for a moment. A retiree may own a home worth hundreds of thousands or even more than $1 million, yet they still struggle to pay insurance, taxes, maintenance, utilities, and everyday living costs. That's what economists often describe as being asset-rich but income-constrained. The report also notes that FHA-insured reverse mortgage volume increased during fiscal year 2025. While many factors influence loan value, it's another reminder that more homeowners are looking to their housing wealth as part of their retirement strategy. The report also touches on something we've discussed often on HECM World, and that's the great wealth transfer. Baby boomers collectively hold trillions of dollars in home equity, but as housing costs continue rising and as more retirees draw on that equity during retirement, that amount ultimately passed to future generations may not be as large as many people expect. It's another reminder that retirement planning isn't simply about accumulating housing wealth. It's about using that wealth strategically. Finally, this week, AARP released new research looking at what older Americans value most about where they live. The findings won't surprise many people working in our industry. Older adults overwhelmingly want to stay where they are. Feeling safe, being close to grocery stores, having good neighbors, and maintaining social connections. These are all ranked among the most important features of a community. Affordable housing also topped the list of improvements people want to see. At the same time, AARP announced its largest ever investment into local communities. The organization is committing more than $8 million to 750 projects across the country. Those projects include improvements to public spaces, transportation, home modifications, accessory dwelling units, and other initiatives designed to help people remain living independently for longer. This reinforces one of the biggest long-term trends that we're seeing. For many retirees, the goal isn't downsizing. It isn't relocating, and it isn't selling the family home. The goal is staying put. And that's an important distinction, because when people want to remain in their homes, the conversation shifts. Instead of asking how they can unlock equity through selling, the question becomes how they can access that equity while continuing to live where they are. That's exactly where reverse mortgages become part of a much broader retirement planning discussion. So, what do all these stories tell us? Taken together, they paint a picture of a housing market that's slowly adapting to an aging America. Congress is trying to improve housing affordability. Researchers are highlighting the financial pressures older homeowners continue facing. Community organizations are investing more heavily in aging in place. And home values continue supporting long-term wealth creation. Threaded through all of those stories is one common theme: home equity. Whether we're talking about affordability, retirement income, community planning, or multi-generational wealth, housing wealth is becoming increasingly central to the conversation. And that's why the reverse mortgage industry sits in such an interesting position today. It's no longer simply about a loan product. It's about helping older homeowners understand how one of their largest financial assets can support the retirement lifestyle they actually want. Thanks for joining us for this week's HECM World Weekly. If you enjoyed today's episode, please subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And don't forget to visit HECMWorld.com for the full article and all of the latest news, insights, and analysis from across the reverse mortgage industry. I'm Gabrielle Hayen.